All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rugby Scoop Podcast. This is a live recording. I'm joined by my Scoop faithful, Jade, Vuyo, Hugh. Vuyo, we'll start off with you, my friend. How things going in Russia? It's quite wet and windy in the Netherlands. And obviously, I was just watching the Dutch team annihilate the Germans in the Rugby Championship, or Rugby Europe Championship, to be fair. Vickers, how are things?
Yeah, all good, man. Same old. Still cold. Nothing much, but yeah, we'll continue. Good to be on with you guys on Sunday.
Always good on a Sunday with Rugby Scoop. Hugh, not so very good on Friday with the result, but how has the rest of the weekend been so far?
It's been good, thanks, mate. It's been raining and windy here in the UK, but there's nothing new there. So, yeah, looking forward to the show today.
Awesome stuff, mate. Awesome stuff. So you sound lively and fresh, actually, by the way. Jade, always sunny in Bloem.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm not that lively and fresh today, but yeah, good.
Care to share why you are not lively and fresh today?
Nah, we have, the youth is listening to this calls and to this podcast, so.
Fair enough. We've got an emoji that just popped up with the laughter as well. Lucky by any chance. Anyway, gentlemen, before we kick off our conversation today, a few headlines making news this week. Starting off, obviously, with news coming from Bloemfontein, Jade, your home city. Ruan Pienaar will take over from Harvey Fourie as Cheetah's head coach from next season. Siya Kolisi, I don't know if you guys listened to the Ruck podcast with Paige. Basically, I heard Siya Kolisi basically talking about how much he still has another 5 years in him within the rugby aspect. Hopefully, we can get to see him go for his fourth World Cup in 2027, or fourth World Cup in terms of attendance, not winning his fourth one, but maybe, hopefully, they can go for 3 straight, the Springboks, in 2027, down under in Australia. Anyway, also we got some clarity from SA Rugby CEO Riaan Oberholzer about the potential R1 billion deal with Ackley Sports Group, that there is no deal that has been reached yet. So all speculations aside, we will wait to hear from the CEO if there's any further developments with regards to this particular story. Also making headlines this afternoon as well from Rugby Pass. We heard that Trevor Nyakane and Andre Esterhazen could be heading back to the Sharks. We'll delve on that later on in our conversation with the guys. But when it comes to results, let's start off by the results of the Rugby Europe Championship. Netherlands beating Germany 39-13. Belgium beating Poland 31-10. Romania losing to Portugal 24-49. And then last but not least, Georgia beating Spain by 38 points to 3. Thrashing. Well done to all the winning teams there in that regard. Rugby Europe competition is growing steadily in leaps and bounds. So keep an eye on some of the footy that takes place there. It's also free, guys. You can watch rugby, or you can go onto the Rugby Europe website to watch your games for free there, and you can see some upcoming youngsters within the European perspective. Right, then let's get the show on the road. We'll kick off with URC. We'll start off with the South African Derbies and then take it up north, where Hugh takes us into detail about some of the results, and then we'll look at the top 8 and who potentially might be still in the top 8 come the end of this season with URC, who are the likely contenders that might be part of the quarterfinals within the URC element. Jade, I want us to start off or kick off with the Lions and the Bulls. I watched that game on repeat as well this morning. I gave it 2 shots. I watched it the first time with an open mind, tried to watch it for the second time. Just a little bit of detail from your side. I mean, what are the some of the key points that you take away from that particular game, the UK Derby, Lions versus the Blue Bulls?
Look, it wasn't the free-flowing game that we had, a few weeks ago when they played each other at Loftus. I actually found it a little bit frustrated, especially in that first 15 minutes.
I think I should have listened to Hugh when he said.
Then last week we see Ellis Park, with more than 10,000 people.
Sorry, I think you were silent for a few seconds there. We missed it. We missed half of what you were saying. Can you just repeat? Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, man. I was just saying that, when last did we see Ellis Park with more than 10,000 people in the stadium? I think there was more than 10,000 people there, so it was, it was a good attendance. But for me, the first 15 minutes was very, unforced errors from both sides. It was cagey. The first half was very cagey, and I mean, we saw a moment of brilliance from Ambrose Papier. With the Kane and Moody try, where it was the Grobler got Steenkamp got the upper hand over the tight head prop of the Lions, and that is where we only saw the first little spark in the first half. And then second half, we saw the Bulls, just grunting away the victory again, what the Bulls do. We saw them going in close a few times, playing phase one ball, short ball the whole time. We saw with the try from Osiakusi, I think it was the third try that they scored, they went close facets, and we saw individual brilliance from David Kriel at the end. But for me, one of the key aspects of this game is it shows that the Bulls has the capability, they can go out wide. I mean, they have got Lawrence and Kane Moody, and they go out wide, and they don't get frustrated at games anymore. Previously we saw games where it was a little bit of a, how can I say, a cagey offense, when there's unforced errors with the Bulls, and they would allow the other team, to stay in the game, and the other team would eventually get the better of them. I mean, we might have seen this in the first game as well, with the Lions getting close to them. But I mean, they stuck to their guns in the second half. They stuck with their forwards. I mean, we saw Akka van der Merwe making a big difference. Martial made a difference when he came on. Van Staden had a good game as well. And, they got the better of the Lions. They stuck to the game plan. A good victory for the Bulls, because at the end of the day, you don't need to look at the performance. You don't need to see that, okay, they were brilliant. They weren't brilliant. They were far from brilliant, but they got 5 points from the game. That's all you want. And I mean, Jitske Derby, 5 points at a more or less packed Ellis Park. I mean, the Bulls can take that and move,
Fair. Vickers, I think 2 questions I have. There's a slow start element Jade talks about. I think I also noticed the same thing in that game as well. Maybe a bit of a ping pong battle. Neither team basically looking at taking the game on to the opposition. And then the other part is the Lions travel to Pretoria and they lose by 1 point or close to that. And then the Bulls travel to Ellis Park and there's a massive gap difference in the victory by the Bulls winning away from home. First of all, your take of the game in general, and then these 2 points that I've just mentioned. I mean, what are your thoughts with that?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, to take what Jade said, also, I think it's also because, I mean, South African teams last played, I think, about 4 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, or 3 weeks ago. So you could say there was a little bit of rustiness within the two teams, because Bulls made a lot of mistakes in the half of the Lions. It's almost similar to, I know we're not talking about now. It's almost similar to the Scarlets game and then Munster. It was also very stop start. So I think for me, I was quite impressed with the fact that Columbia came on in the first half and he held his own. He also, I mean, like Jade said, the guys that came off the bench made a massive difference. I thought Papier was outstanding. I can see Papier, why he made the Springboks. We can start to see those little bit of the attributes that made the Springboks. And then I think just in general, I think the Bulls were just dominant. They were just dominant. They were dominant in those tackles. They were dominant in those ball carries. I mean, those guys were just coming. They were getting smashed 100%, but they were still coming. So, which is we know the old Bulls rugby, and that's how it is. They break you down as a opposition team. Yeah, like I said, in going to the Lions went to Loftus with a little bit of a positive, a high. I mean, they just pushed a couple of teams from like Stormers, pushed the Sharks. I think they beat the Sharks, and then they went to the Bulls after a couple of after a big loss at home, but they wanted to prove themselves. So I think this time around they just couldn't handle the contest. They couldn't handle the collision. So I think that's why there was such a big difference. And obviously with the Bulls as well, if you look at how they structured their plays in a sense where they had a very good bench, the guys that are experienced, and when they came on, they made a massive difference. So I think in looking at that, I think for me, there's not much that the Lions could have given. The loss of Emmanuel Chituka, who was very instrumental this season, was a big loss for them. But other than that, yeah, they were just there and about. And Lowe was not at his best, the captain. And I think that's what, a couple of things that just didn't go their way.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of their passing, a lot of their kicks as well, coming from the Lions' perspective, didn't stick. A lot of handling errors, which also meant that they don't have a good momentum going forward. I mean, there was an element where Nohamba, or I think it was against the run of play, and Nohamba was trying to make a pass out wide to Kriel. It hit one of the Lions players. It traveled forward. I mean, that could have been a point scoring opportunity, and then you have a different ball game altogether, because I think the score at that time was 10-3 or 13-3, and if they score in that moment, there's a big scoreboard pressure element that's involved within the game, because those are the finer moments, those are the finer details that make a difference for a team. Hugh, are you happy with the Bulls at the moment? They seem to be building quite well. Obviously, Vuyo speaks about the lengthy break that the teams have had. Obviously, there will be a bit of rust, but at the moment, in the bigger scale of things, I mean, are you happy to see how well the Bulls have developed this season?
I think they're performing as expected, because I think I was always backing them to be right up there, and I still am in terms of the URC League. They seem to have periods in games where they're very dominant. I think their forward pack is as good as anybody's anywhere. But they seem to have moments as well in games where they just let the opposition back in and they switch off. And they get scares off teams that they shouldn't really be getting scares off at times. But yeah, I think they're still very much on track, and I fully expect to see them in the playoffs. I want to know what you guys think of David Kriel in the centres. His stats are absolutely incredible in terms of try involvements. There's no player who is not either a halfback or a hooker that has more in try involvements than him. So is he pushing for a Springboks place? Do the Boks need to start looking for a backup to Dialende? Or is he just unfortunately coming along at the wrong time? I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts.
That's a good one. I think I'll leave that for Vuyo and Jade. But Jade has got his hand up. Before you chime in, Jade, so answer Hugh's question and then chime in, and Vuyo can take over from there.
Forgive me for this, but I think David Kriel is good, but I do not think he has the capability, to be a world-class 12. I think the Allender and Estreisen is ahead of him. I put David Kriel in the category as a Wynand Olivier that played for them a few years ago, similar. I don't think he has that, although he has been doing brilliantly, at URC level. We'll never know unless he gets opportunity, but that's my gut on him. And I just think that Sasha, Andre Estreisen, they're next in line, to replace Damien de Allender. But Damien de Allender is not that old. I think he's about 31, 32, thereabouts. So he might have another World Cup in him as well. So So I think South Africa, they're blessed with good 12s. Unfortunately, Kirill, I think maybe the wrong era at the moment. I could be wrong, but I mean, he's putting his hand up. But yeah, I just rate him as a Wynand Olivier kind of player. Brilliant at URC or Super Rugby, but I don't think, we'll just have that, make the cut at international rugby.
Yeah, I mean, to back also what Jade was talking about, I think it's one of those where I don't think he will feel he does fit that Springbok mode, based on the fact that of his size. With South Africa uses a lot of their 12s. We use a lot of almost like bashing up and giving us the momentum so that our forwards can come around, or we set up a nice phase to bring our forwards in a dominant position. So when I look at David Kriel, I'm almost in that sense where I would be very surprised if they went for him. I mean, if you look at a guy like Rohan Janssen van Rensburg, who didn't make the team, but he's got all those attributes that we talk about. And then you go and grab someone like David Kriel and put him in that 12 jersey. I don't know. I even Sasha, I don't even see him playing at 12 for the Springboks. I think Damon Willemse would be ahead of Sasha if we had to go that route. So yeah, it's unfortunately, as Jade has said, it's wrong era, wrong time.
Yes, we're not going to pretend like Jade didn't mention Sasha, because I'm now in a position where I go Sasha at 12 for the Springboks. Jade, talk to me.
No. Look, he's playing at 12 for the Stormers. I think he's a Flauf is his best position. I think that's his best position. I think it's similar to maybe what the Crusaders did with Carter a few years when he started, winding him in at 12. I mean, you can't drop Mani Lipoka at the moment. But I mean, even the weekend, they started him at 12 when Mani didn't play. So I think eventually he will move into the 10 role, maybe in the next World Cup cycle or so. But I mean, he has been a part of the box setup and in the squad. So Rassie Wood does have his eye on him. I'm not sure if it is at 12, like Vuyo said, with the game plan, the box play, with having a physical 12. And I mean, they have the Islander and Esterhuis in there, that's their first and second choice 12. So, I mean, there's a very, very, you have to change your game plan basically if you're going to choose Sasha or even Damien Willemse at 12, But I think for now, Sasha is in the plan. He is in Rassie is thinking about him. But for me, I would think he's at the moment, honestly, Sasha would be my third or fourth choice Flauf at the moment in the box setup. I don't think as a 12 he would be, mentioned as a 12 international rugby. But yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Hugh.
Yeah, even though Sasha's playing as a 12, he's very much being the 10. I mean, I don't think Lebok and Sasha have played together yet this season, correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't even know who was playing 10. Whenever the Stormers play with Sasha at 12, I don't know who's playing 10. The Stormers might as well pick another back row there, because Sasha does everything. He runs the game for the Stormers. He's doing the crossfield kicks. He's coming in at first receiver. He's distributing the ball out the back. So he's got a 12 on his back, but he's not playing like a 12. He's playing like a 10. It's just unfortunate. There's Manny Lebok and Andre Pollard in front of him for the box. Or you never know what Rassie might do. He might play a fly half. He might play a scrum half there. We don't know. But yeah, I think Sasha will probably move to the 10 jersey. Like Jay said, he just is unfortunate that he's playing the same team as Manny Lebok at the moment.
Yeah, Vuyo.
He's definitely going to be involved. I think, as you guys have mentioned, he's definitely in the eyes of the Springboks, especially at that fly-off role. I was just actually about to make a comment on what and Hugh made it about Sasha. He actually slotted in a lot at 10. We didn't see much of Mattia. Yes, we saw a couple of times on the kicks, but he wasn't involved as much. Sasha was directing the plays. Just a comment on one of the Bulls players. I don't know if you guys know Van der Vaart, the flyer who started. Look, it's unfortunate that he's already played for Scotland, but I think that kid is talented. it's unfortunate, really unfortunate. I don't know if he will still be eligible to play for South Africa, but he's very talented, and I think a team like the Stormers or even the Lions actually he'll be a great inclusion there.
Yeah, fair enough. Then now moving away to Sharks, the Shark Tank. Hollywood Bets Sharks is what they call them these days. Against the Stormers. Vuyo, might as well start with you, then move on to Hugh, and then Jade after that. Looking at how also there was a bit of a delay, but the Stormers were camping inside the Sharks half for the first 20 minutes of that game. But very, very good defense effort from the Sharks. But eventually the Stormers broke through. But your overall perspective, looking at the Sharks and the Stormers, are there any key elements from your side where you go, actually, the Sharks are improving from the Sharks from a month ago? Are there elements of or signs that show us that the Sharks are improving? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I won't dive too much into it, but I think when I look at the Sharks, for example, I think they like you said, Scoop, their defense has improved massively. I think Joey has really done some good job and a good work there in terms of identifying what was needed to be done, and I think they're even making better tackles at the moment than they used to in those first few rounds. Yeah, the Stormers, obviously, with the Stormers losing a couple of guys. Like the Springbok players, they were a little bit short, but I think they still did very well to get that sort of win in Durban. The defense of the Sharks gave Warwick too much time, and I mean he's the boogeyman. Warwick is one of the most talented players we'll find, but if he's playing with the team with freedom, you better be worried because he is that quality. And the Sharks gave him that kind of freedom. They gave him that kind of freedom yesterday, and it's unfortunate that is it for Sheer who was better. I think that man of the match should have gone to either Warwick or Sasha for yesterday. The Stormers threw the ball around a bit, but as we say, like it wasn't that kind of weather. It was very humid, and it obviously when it's humid in Durban, it gets very slippery. So, but I think they did very well. We didn't see their scrum so dominant this time, but also maybe because of the reserves for the Sharks. I mean, that Springbok bench when they came in. I mean, Tunu is a Springbok bench now. But he hasn't been there for a long time. But Bonambi and Osterhazen, they brought in quite a good to make it steady. One thing I did pick up, I think the Sharks are lacking like ball carriers. I think that was one of the things that I didn't pick up because every time they were running, they were deciding to run the ball. They couldn't get over their advantage line based on the fact that they don't have those dominant ball carriers. And we don't know, obviously, why Ruan van Rensburg was released because he could have been in that role. But Frans Ofenta, once you have Frans Ofenta and Lucanio Am, you probably have the same person. And I saw a couple of times Lucanio was even taking up the first phase ball. So, yeah, it's a little bit tricky at the moment for the Sharks, but I think they're trying to find their feet. Definitely have improved on the defense. So, yeah, it could work in their benefit going forward.
Hugh. Yeah, Hugh.
I didn't catch too much of this game. I think I only caught the very end. I saw Bongi's try. But yeah, I think Stormers seem to be getting into closer competitions than they need to. Again, it's a bit like the Bulls. They just have these crazy moments they try and overplay. Maybe it's just their identity. But sometimes I'm like, just kick the ball into the opposition 22, for goodness sake. But yeah, Sharks, in terms of... I think they'll end the season strong. I think that they've had, obviously, their tour at the beginning of the season, and then they've had the derbies in the middle. I think they're going to welcome a lot of Northern Hemisphere teams to Kings Park for this last third of the season, and I think they're going to rack up some wins. And by the end of the season, I think people will start feeling a lot better than them, because the URC is all about the fixture list. It's the most important thing about the league. So yeah, it's funny with their signing news. It's like, how many Springboks do you need? I mean, it's going to be like these guys are going to be wearing a Sharks jersey and losing all their games, and then they're literally going to change to a green jersey and beat the All Blacks at this rate.
Take it easy, take it easy, take it easy. Watch what you say and say what you watch. Jade, your thoughts on that Sharks game and the Stormers?
Yeah, no, it's true what you say is when it comes to the Sharks, because we just saw the news on Rugby Pass regarding Trevor and Andre Esterhuizen, going back to the Sharks, and maybe Vio. That's why Jans van Rensburg, was let go, because, they must probably tapped up Esterhuizen a few months ago and tried to work on a deal to bring him back. But yeah, for the Stormers, I actually missed the game yesterday and I watched it this morning. Coming fly off his big the vet, Paul the Vet. He vouches for Paul the Vet every weekend, and he told me that I should check the game and check Paul the Vet's performance. So I actually watched the game, and what I can take from the Stormers and where we're getting about the Stormers, they have a winning a winning feeling in this camp, and they're not an easy team to beat. It doesn't matter who they play against. You're going to have to be on your A game to beat the Stormers team, regardless who plays. They got a winning culture, and I always say kudos to Dobson for picking this team up from where they were, a few seasons ago. Kudos to him. He's been brilliant there. But they've got this winning culture. They don't die. They don't die. There's some games that you really think the Stormers won't win. They might be missing a few blocks here and there, but they still end up winning the game. Nothing changed with them. They still continue to play. Like Vuyo said yesterday, I was surprised with Galan's performance yesterday, because he hasn't really been at his best this season. I think he's been, by his own standards, been a little bit below par, because I was always wondering, what are they going to do when Willems is back and when Sasha's fit and you have Lebok? Where are you going to fit Galant in? Are you going to play him on the wing, or what are you going to do with him? So, but yesterday he put his hand up again. Joe also had a good, decent game yesterday as well. So yeah, I think the Stormers for me is always a team that, you're going to have to go the extra mile to beat this team. They're a real solid outfit. They're still the team to beat in South Africa.
Do you know who else is putting their hand up? Hugh Griffin.
So a question for the panel. So the Stormers have played 3 of their last 5 games in front of 30,000 plus people. They've had 2 back-to-back URC finals and won one of them. They've beaten La Rochelle, the European champions. They've beaten Stade Francais in Paris. Stade Francais, one of the most successful teams in French rugby history. They beat the English Premiership finalists in Sale Sharks in Cape Town. At what point do we say that the Stormers are one of the biggest club sides in the world?
Until they beat a team that plays in Adidas sponsored in a quarterfinal, in a semi-final, then we can say they're in the top outfit, because that's the Achilles heel. The Stormers, all the years, as soon as they play a team that's sponsored by Adidas in a knockout game, boom, they lose. Look at the final last year against Munster. Always look at the background in Super Rugby. They always lose against a team that plays in Adidas, sponsored by Adidas. And who's La Rochelle sponsored by? Adidas. So yeah, let's see if they can break the curse in April.
Very good.
That is a good start. I wasn't aware of that, so I'm going to bear that in mind from now on.
Yeah, very good question, though. In essence, when I now think about the Stormers, they are the best side in South African terms when it comes to Currie Cup history and heritage. But then when it came to Super Rugby, they were always thereabouts. Could never really go over the line when it came to Super Rugby. I think their best opportunity of winning the title was when they played the Bulls in Soweto. That was a while back, I think 2009 or 2010 or something like that. And then when it comes to URC, but they seem to have found some form of winning formula when it comes to URC. Obviously, with the change, Dobson, the financial aspects, etc., all the other lingering issues, they seem to have an identity. Going back to what Vuyo has spoken about regarding the Stormers' identity when we were talking about coaching earlier on in one of our pods, but I think with this current coaching staff, with this current group of players, I think they can actually grow from this. I think they're really putting their hand up when it comes to being noticed. Maybe they just need to change their colors to red and black, like all the best rugby clubs in the world. Vuyo.
No ways. Anyway, I think Stormers should just get their Adidas back, man. They should just get their Adidas sponsor back, then everything will be back to normal. But no, look, I wanted to share some things with. I think when I look at the Stormers team, it's exactly the same team. So same mold as the Lions 2016, 17, 18. I mean, we knew who the Lions were. We knew the players, but it was more about what the players were giving on the field. There weren't any stars. I mean, yes, we can say Elton was a star in the Lions team, but Elton was not a star in world rugby. So I think this team for me, this Stormers team is exactly that kind of mode where all these players that are coming from different unions, some unions release them, and now they're putting them together. And obviously, who's the best man for that job to do that, especially is in that situation, is Dobbo, because Dobbo is going to create the environment. And I think that is why the players are striving. It's because they all sort of came back from somewhere. They all were released from contracts from somewhere. And now they're finding themselves in a position where, look, guys, we can play for each other. And that's what they're doing. And that's going to carry them a long way. And they've won the URC. We've seen the Lions in the final of the Super Rugby. They didn't win it. But so the similarities for me, that's why I raised the point where I'm saying that a lot of this is based on the fact that the players that are there know that they were rejected at some unions and now they have the opportunity to step up.
Fair enough. Jade, last point?
Yeah. Just two quick points here. They went through dark hours together. When we read the stories of the coach having to buy them lunch, on tour and stuff like that. They were facing administration. So they went through dark hours together, the squad, and I think they just kicked on from there. And the other thing that I want to just mention, to you and to the panel, guys, can we please start a petition or something? I know we're ending the URC chat for South African teams now, but can we get a petition or something to stop games at 3 p.m. kickoff in Highveld in South Africa? It's too hot. It's affecting the players. I mean, can we not, move the games on a little bit, because it's really ridiculous, especially in South Africa's summer.
It's too hot. Anyway, I know where it's not hot. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's very cold currently. We're looking at single digits, but obviously we're heading into a spring quite soon. Hugh, how are things looking in the URC department? Scarlets over Munster on Friday. Obviously, Scarlets coming off with a heavy loss. From what I saw, the scoreline is a bit flattering, but I mean, the Scarlets did show some fight, but obviously Munster just too strong for Scarlets at the end. Talk to me about URC over in Europe.
Just before you jumps in, Jade is saying that the 3 o'clock times, it's rough in South Africa. Wait until you get to Europe, mate, when you're playing at 9:15 in the evening, where you have to wait the whole day for the game. That's when it gets tricky.
There are games in France that kick off at 9 o'clock at night on a Thursday. That's when the Pro D2 play. Crazy French people. Anyway, how's things going with the Scarlets? Not good. We're not a very good rugby team. So for anybody who doesn't know, Scarlets are the team that I support. And we've had a terrible season, and we've got many problems, and none of them have been fixed. We are better than we were, but that's not saying very much. So the defence against Munster was quite good for large periods of the first half. But if you look at the tackle stats, now tackle stats don't mean very much, but a lot of players made double-figure tackles, including many backs, and they were all making all of those tackles. There weren't many missed tackles, but just the sheer number of them, sheer volume of them. By the time we got to 65 minutes, the Scarlets were absolutely done, completely shattered, and our conditioning and our fitness has been terrible all season. We are not conditioned to be able to play these high intensity matches, and that's why we normally can't put together 80-minute performances. It was particularly bad down in South Africa for the first 2 games of the season, and it's still bad now, and that's on the coaches for me. There are players who are playing well, despite how badly the team is doing as a whole. I think there not being a clear kicking strategy is one of our long-term issues. Johnny McNichol was back, who I'm sure a lot of people will remember from playing, I think it was for the Crusaders in Super Rugby. He's great, but he is very much give me the ball and I'll do something amazing. He's not I'm going to make the team work better, but the team has moments on the pitch where they all look around at each other and you can see them looking at each other going, what am I supposed to be doing? What are you supposed to be doing? And again, that reflects badly on the coaches. Particularly, there was one line out in the first half, which was just an absolute shambles. But 2 players who I think are fantastic for the Scarlets are the centres. There's Eddie James, who is new to the team this year. He played 10 at age grade, he's now moved to 12. And he can do a bit of everything. He can grubber, he can pass, he can distribute, he stands in at first receiver, he can organise the attacking line. And we are a very different team with him in. And Joe Roberts outside him at 13. Joe Roberts is the best centre in Wales. I will die on this hill. And it's frustrating that George North... Well, it's not frustrating because George North is a great player. But George North's experience and his combination with Tompkins is what is keeping Joe Roberts out of the team. As a 13, Joe Roberts is a much more natural 13 than George North. And for me, I'd like to see him in the team, but I'm just not sure when that's going to happen at the moment. So, yeah, so that's the Scarlets thing. So I'm going to ask you guys, because you will know, Scarlets have just signed Jared Taylor from Western Province. Tell me about this guy. I'd like to know what his strengths are. Is he the real deal? And what his best position is.
One thing I can tell you about Jared Taylor, he went to the best school in South Africa, and that is Selborne College.
Anything else?
I know Piwe Nomlomo, who's currently coaching at the Bulls at the moment. He coached him a while back when he was still in high school, and he was one of the players that were poached by Grey College, and Piwe had to fight tooth and nail to bring those boys back to Selborne College in East London. And then after high school, I think they went to Durban or Cape Town, one of the two, and then Durban, and then eventually moved to Cape Town, or went to Cape Town directly. I'm not quite too sure about that. But Jared Taylor played lock, very strong ball carrier. He was quite big for his age as well. I mean, he stood tall amongst 18-year-olds in South Africa. You know how big our players are. But I never got to see him play professional level. So basically him coming over there will probably be his first outing at senior level. Obviously, COVID kind of probably delayed his progress in through the system, because a lot of players' progress was probably halted by COVID. But now maybe we should see in the next 2 or 3 seasons, we should see a lot of young talent that was meant to come through around 2020, 2021, that was probably delayed by the COVID element, now starting to make its way into the system. So, yeah, let's give him a season, see how he fares in the season, and then maybe we'll get a good idea of how much he still needs to work or how much he has worked in these past couple of years. But other than that, I can't give you any more detail.
Look, he did represent. I think he did play SA schools. Yeah, so I think look, you're not going to get a shabby player. You're definitely getting a good quality player, better than Kasim, your legend. I think he'll definitely be better than Kasim going into obviously to you guys there. Yeah, but look, I think most important with our kids, it's coaching. If they can understand the way that the coaches want them to play, I think they'll fit right in. I think that won't be too bad. So you're getting a quality player. I mean, once you make SA schools, you definitely quality, but then the system obviously just doesn't suit you because we have so many of these players coming through. Just wanted to also comment on what you were saying. I thought your 13 was brilliant. I think when I watched yesterday, I also went, he's actually a very good 13, which is I don't understand why George North is still there. That was my first one. But my second one was the fullback. I can't remember his name, but I was impressed. I don't
Johnny
think the guy
McNichol.
is bad at all. I don't think he's bad at all. I think he's got pace. He's got a little bit of vision. I'm not sure how old he is because obviously some of the...
He's like 30, 31, 32. He played for Wales under Pivac. But at one point, sorry to interrupt you, mate. At one point we had him, Liam Williams and Lee Halfpenny all at the Scarlets at the same time, which was crazy. What a waste of money that was.
Definitely a waste. Yeah, but he's old. He's too old anyway now. So, but I thought I was impressed. So maybe that's why I was impressed. It's the old head.
He's a Kiwi, good player.
Anyway, gentlemen. Okay, now rounding it off with URC. We've got the top 8. Vuyo, do you think the Sharks? Okay, the Sharks won't make it. Sorry. Do you think the Lions have a chance of cracking it into the top 8 at the moment because it looks very, very tight? And obviously the Stormers have just sneaked in. And do they hold their position because we're halfway through the season and there's still plenty of rugby to be played and upsets? We know the URC is very full of them. What are your thoughts within the top 8?
Yeah, look, I've always had this in my mind, and I think actually I'm starting to think it is the way it is in Europe. It's the fact that the European teams don't really care before Christmas. What happens before Christmas? It's almost like they take it as the English Premiership. They don't really care what happens before Christmas. It's everything. It's everything in the New Year. And I think when I look at the Lions, the way they played yesterday, if they don't get the points that they need to get within this first 6 or 7 weeks of Six Nations, I can't see them making the top 8. And also the Bulls, Stormers, they're definitely going to be there. They're definitely going to be there. I think obviously we know Leinster by now, but I'm just interested to see how the Ulster is going to do and how. I think if I look at between Ospreys and Ospreys and Dragons, I don't know how they're gonna. Maybe they might get in. Maybe they might sneak in one of them. But Wales might not have any teams in the top 8. Just on that, based on that, I think it's probably just spelled out with Glasgow, Edinburgh. Benetton might sneak in. They're also obviously looking good. So we'll see how it goes. But South African teams, only Bulls at this stage and Stormers. Was very, very surprised to see the 1% of Sharks can win their home game against the Stormers. That was very surprising for me.
Hugh, any hope for Welsh teams? And obviously the Irish teams are, making it through. We saw what Leinster did against Benetton. Benetton obviously missing some players because of the Six Nations element. Obviously Leinster also missing some players because of Six Nations. But regardless of that, any Welsh sides that you think might literally stay in the top 8 currently and obviously make it through to the playoffs?
If the Ospreys are playing Ulster right now, if they win this, then they've got a chance. If not, then no. So the Ospreys have had a very favourable fixture list up until now. They've got by far the strongest squad in Wales, so they should be finishing the closest out of all of them. And you have to remember that the way that the URC is structured, the way that the shields work, is that if you compare two teams that are at a similar level, like Connacht and the Ospreys, Connacht have got to play 3 extra games against Leinster, Munster, and Ulster, whereas the Ospreys are playing against Cardiff, Scarlets, and Dragons. So the Ospreys have got an advantage there because the Welsh sides are worse. So, yeah, like I said, they're currently 1 point down at half-time. If they win this, then they're still in with a chance. Other than that, none of the other Welsh teams are going to get close. I think Benetton are still on track. I think, they lost. It was a bad scoreline over in Leinster yesterday. It was a great first half, a fantastic game to watch. And they've recruited really well, and they're continuing to recruit really well, Benetton. They only need to get, I think, 4 more wins this season to pretty much get not only into the playoffs, but a home playoff. So hopefully they're going to stick on course for that, because it would be great for the league if Benetton can achieve that. Like you say, I think 3 of the 4 Irish sides are pretty much nailed on. And then Glasgow. Glasgow have had a really strong start to the season. I think they won all of their games in October. Then they've had a bit of a wobble through the winter months, but they should get back on track hopefully soon. But Vuyo is absolutely right. With Northern Hemisphere, especially in the URC, it's all about post Six Nations, really. I would even go further than New Year. I would say after the Six Nations, whoever gets momentum after the Six Nations is normally the team that wins it.
Jade, have you had a chance to have a look at the top 8?
Yeah, I'm looking at the log right now, and I'm so surprised that, this thing's been on forever and they only played 10 games. No, honestly, I mean, I also, I pay a lot of attention. I always say that, the URC, I tend to spend or take special attention to the URC after the Six Nations around about this time, because then the games get interesting. For me, Benetton and Glasgow are the 2 that, put up their hands all season, and I really hope they not just make it through, but both of them can get a home semi. I think they will fancy their chances against any of the teams at home. The Bulls and the Stormers, they'll scrap for that last home semi or home playoff spot. Sorry, not home semi, but the home quarterfinal spot. And I think Leinster obviously will top it. But from the Stormers or from Edinburgh, Munster, Ulster, Connacht, Ospreys is a dogfight, because, like you said, Ospreys has the advantage that they play around Welsh teams, and I mean, they're not that strong, so they can also creep into it by the win Ulster today, which is what we would call an 8-pointer on this log. But yeah, for me, I think the top 5 is sorted out, maybe top 6 with Munster in there. And then between Edinburgh, Ulster, Connacht, Ospreys, the Lions, they have an outside chance. But yeah, I think it might be a bridge too far for them. But yeah, that's my makeup of it. So I really hope that, the way the season's been out, I hope that Glasgow and Benetton get a home quarterfinal, because I mean, they've been playing good rugby all the way through.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, we have to move on to the next topic. Obviously today there was also news coming out of the Springbok alignment group of some of the players that have been involved or picked for this particular group. So we saw, obviously, there's been an omission for Joseph Dweba, Aphelele Fasi, Hachiva Taimani. They've not been invited to the first Springbok alignment camp. This is obviously according to report, but apparently the players that are involved, Nohamba, I think we cannot disagree on that one. He's been very good. Cameron Hanekom has been involved as well. Horn, Yuchu Fenta is also in there. Jordan Hendrickse is there. There's also another Fenta, A.H. Fenter, which is, I think, is Andre Fenter's son from Grave College as well. Talimbilo Kumeda is also there, Henko van Veek. I mean, there's a few other players, Van der Berg, Robela as well. Jade, who would you have liked to see also maybe added to this particular list?
Looks cool. This list, we need to take it with a pinch of salt as well, because I mean, it's just a list that they put to the squad that they got together for looking at guys that hasn't really made their debut. I'm really happy that the bull flanker got in, not Anakom. Can't get his name now, but anyway, I'm happy that he got in. But for me, little birdie told me in December that there'll be two more great college guys, both at Hooker, getting a debut in July next year for the Boks. And they were speaking of Janus, Janendra van Wyk, and then obviously Andre Hugo Venter. I was referring to those two. So there was a little bit of inside information there. Could have been maybe Om Rugby that spoke there, but yeah. But I had that information, and I didn't really pass it on until this morning that I knew those two would actually be involved, because they have been two that Rassi's been having a look at. But I mean, guys like Akka van der Merwe, the older guys like Dweba, Daimani is a big shock. I mean, I thought he would have been in there, at least in the squad at least, but it looks like Rassi is bringing in all of the guys that hasn't made their debut to have a look at them, to check what they are, to see how they get into the setup, to look at their testing and their conditioning and all of that, and to see if they make the cut, because I mean, I think he does know what Webb's offer. He does know I think he knows what Akka has to offer as well, and all of those guys. Welko Lowe is another one that also hasn't been in there. So, yeah, I think it's just basically to give those guys, just have a look at them, and maybe he has a 4-year plan with them, Maybe they might not be in the box squad this year. Maybe next year. He just might tell them, guys, go and work on this X, Y, and Z and come back next season. But that's maybe the purpose of this camp, because, I mean, his team. This team's been around for 2 World Cups. They want him to World Cups. So maybe he's looking at that 4-year cycle where he can win in these guys.
Yeah, fair enough. Vuyo, I mean, in terms of alignment camps, obviously the public might, I don't know, have minor detail with regards to what happens at these things. We've seen them now since Rassi has taken over. There's been alignment camps every year, every season. Within these alignment camps, I mean, what are some of the details, or what are some of the things that take place in these alignment camps that make these guys improve maybe on certain detail during their provincial representation, and then work on certain things, or they get told to work on certain things with the Stormers, with the Sharks, with the Lions, with the Blue Bulls, in order for them to make it into the Springbok team. I mean, what are some of the details maybe we might not be au fait with when it comes to Springbok camp or alignment camps?
Yeah, look, most of the introductions in terms of alignment camp is based on the players meeting coaching staff, the players seeing how the players behave in that environment, and with alignment camps is basically to pick up on the skills in term live, not looking at a game, not looking at a not hearing from someone else's mouth. Basically, playing fun games, looking at how different guys perform certain skills under pressure or no pressure. Then I think the most important is the mindset. It's that we call it life coaching skills. So it's picking up on the what type of person this person is, what type of how do they behave with the environment around them, and how will that environment influence their performance in future. So most of the alignment camps is something like that. It's something that you always try and find out certain players, how they think, what they think of, so that you can be able to say, is this player going to make this kick or not? Those are the kind of things that you pick up in alignment camps. And obviously, the biggest thing is introduction of the game plan, and are you able to execute the game plan? Because if I say to you, we need to kick here 10 times, and you do it 6 times, then I have to think as a coach, is that what I need? Because if you can't get the kicks 10 times out of 9 times out of 10, then that means that I have less 4 chances of creating what I want. So alignment camps are mostly about that, just to balance it out, to see if you can get players that are in that kind of mode. And also the mental work, obviously, that's very important in international rugby. Yeah. I think when we look at, I'll make 2 examples about Dweba and Daimani. If you look at Daimani, he hasn't been invited in any camps. He hasn't played for the Springboks. So I think for him, he has a lot of work in terms of how he's going to get in. And we discussed it a few times, a few weeks ago, or it was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, about how I don't think he's going to make it. And we all shared our views. I think at the moment, if you look at the players that are within the Springboks, it's actually massive. Those players are that role, the number 7, number 8 role, is actually filled up within the Springboks, and it's going to be difficult. He's going to have to do something different for him to be able to get invited. And if you look at Dweba, it all spells out what happened before the World Cup, because if he didn't get called up after Bongi got injured, and instead Lucanio Arm was brought in, that says a lot about what was happening within that. So we don't know the nitty-gritties, but for me, that's what I think. Obviously, something there has gone a little bit sour, and I don't know if we'll see him back in the boxes unless really we need help.
Ooh, Jade.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to that, just a little bit on the lighter side, that Andre Hugo Venter is dating Rassi's daughter, so I don't think Rassi wanted to upset his daughter. That's why he went with Andre Hugo Venter. I'm just joking. But yeah, both of them have been playing good rugby. And, Giannis and Andre Hugo Venter has been playing brilliant rugby this season. And the other hooker as well by the Bulls. All 3 hookers by the Bulls have been brilliant. And there's a spot, because they need to fill 2 hookers for the tour. With Bongi, with Marks being injured, Bongi came back now, so he really needs to blood hookers in. I don't think he'll get away with having a Dion Fourie again in his squad at the next World Cup or so. So he really needs to blood his hookers, and that's why he went with those 2 young guns.
That is fair. Would you have liked to see someone as well involved in this camp from a South African perspective?
I don't know. You guys obviously know the players much better than I do. So I'll wait until I see the full list. I can't think of anyone in particular. I can say that I wish that Cameron Hanekom was playing for Wales rather than South Africa. That's my only preference. But I got a question for Vuyo, if that's okay. So when you go to one of these alignment camps or whatever it is with your international coach, and your international coach gives you the work-ons and says, I want you to get better at this, this, and this, how does that conversation then go with your club coach when you go back to them and say, hey, coach, they've told me I need to do this, this, and this different if I want to get picked for the national side? And then maybe the club coach is thinking, well, I don't want you to do that. We've heard about in England, some players get told by the club coach, put weight on, and they get told by the national coach, take weight off. Can that be difficult sometimes? How does that work?
Yeah, it is a little bit difficult because obviously the most important thing is having a relationship with the club. That's the most important. So with Rassi being he was part of the Stormers, he already has a foot in the door there. With the Lions, he'll be able to chat with Rudolf Shauli, and I mean most of the guys there. He knows those coaches. And in the Sharks, it's pretty easy with Neil Powell being director of rugby. So the only problems I think you would probably not have a relationship with that is good enough is probably the Bulls, but with the players, it's not something that will change their game. It's not something that will change their game. It's not something that will change their personality. It's something that will just increase maybe on just those soft skills. Maybe you get told you need to throw 100 line-out throws in a, say, for example, as part of your skills work, and you as a player can do that on their own. So it will never be something that will influence the performance of the province or the union or the franchise. But as I said, most of the time, national team coaches have relationships with the top clubs that they get players from, and they do look at and how they can obviously start the process at a club level, so that because we don't have much time in the international level.
Is that all good, Hugh?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Gents, I understand we don't have a lot of time, but there's one more topic that we need to get through. One more topic that we need to really grind out and actually get answers for. Hugh, I understand you might not have seen some of these guys or might not have watched a lot of these Oaks play back in 2003. But there's been murmurs, there's been a lot of talk about this current Irish team and how well they're performing. And guys, kudos to Andy Farrell and his team. They've done an amazing job in the past 2 to 3 years. They've done a fantastic job in basically building momentum, winning in New Zealand, and obviously wanting to come and win in South Africa currently. They've only lost, 2 or 3 games in the past 34 outings, which is a very good stat. And now they've been compared to the All Blacks of old, the All Blacks of the past decade, and also being compared to Clive Woodward's 2003 England team. What I want to discuss is looking at this current Irish team, looking at the 2002, 2003 English team. I think we've had some chances, or we've had an opportunity for some of us to have seen how well that English team was, how good that English team was under Clive Woodward. Some of those players used to play for Leicester Tigers, and Leicester Tigers used to kind of dominate a lot of European tournaments as well in that era, almost similar to what Leinster is currently doing and the Irish team. Jade, can we say Clive Woodward's English team is better than this current Andy Farrell Irish team? Why?
Yeah. Because number one reason they they did, and they won the World Cup basically. So they have a picture in somewhere at Twickenham of Martin Johnson holding up a World Cup trophy, and at the end of the day, that is what Ireland wants the most. They would ask any Irish supporter around the world, they would give it up. The Grand Slam, winning the Grand Slam for the next 4 years until the World Cup, or not winning a Grand Slam and winning a World Cup. What would you do? What would you choose? Would you rather choose 4 consecutive Grand Slams and not win a World Cup, or win that World Cup tournament? They would want to win the World Cup. And Ireland hasn't won the World Cup. Yes, Andy Farrell's done brilliant. He's been brilliant. He's won the Six Nations. I mean, it looks like he's going to win it again. He's only lost 3 games. But I mean, he did not win the World Cup. He failed. So the one major achievement was he failed at. Whereas Clive Woodward built up to 2003, he built up to winning at World Cup, and he won it in Australia. He beat New Zealand in New Zealand. He beat Australia in Australia. He beat South Africa as well. And let's not forget about this. 2007, there was a lot of those guys that didn't retire that went to the 2007 World Cup and made the final. Clive Woodward wasn't there, but I mean, there's a few of those guys that played 2 back-to-back World Cup finals, where Ireland hasn't done that yet. Until they win a World Cup, we can't put them in that category. I'm sorry, because if we're going to promote our game as the William Webb Ellis, winning the William Webb Ellis trophy as being the elite and, you know, the big achievement in rugby in international stage, then we can't make a comparison. So at the moment, Clive Woodward still has that bragging rights. Maybe Farrell can win it in Australia. Maybe he can go do the double in Australia, win the Lions series, and then he goes on to win the World Cup in Australia. I mean, then I would say well done to Ireland, you know, because then they can really be up there with, I mean, the greatest of greatest rugby teams. I mean, from all this diversity that they had and, you know, setbacks that they had in 2023 and then going on to 2027 and winning it. But until then, guys, I think Ireland needs to win the World Cup before we can have that talk of them being sitting around the table with the elite rugby teams.
Fair. Hugh, I bring you into this conversation. Why? A lot of the people that I see on my timeline, a lot of Irish, a lot of some of the UK people as well, talk about the rivalry, the intensity of the Six Nations, how important it is to win the Six Nations. Some of them even saying it's not that important to win the World Cup. Listening to what Jada said, listening to the comparisons of 2003 versus the current Irish team, what is the mood in the UK and Ireland when it comes to Six Nations, and also what is the mood when it comes to World Cup?
The Six Nations is the bread and butter. The Six Nations is the thing that obviously happens every year. I would put the Six Nations ahead of the Rugby Championship, if for no other reason that the Rugby Championship, you play each other home and away. So if you beat someone at home, you have to go away, and that's why you normally see the All Blacks win it every year, because they need to win 4 out of their 6 games to win it. I think if Ireland win back-to-back Grand Slams, which has never been done in the Six Nations before, then that's a level of dominance in Northern Hemisphere rugby that there's never been in the professional era. And you have to remember that England, in the Six Nations era, have won 2 Grand Slams ever. One in 2003, one in 2016. And so Clive Woodward's England never went back-to-back with Grand Slams. You've also got the Lions thing, where if your national team goes on to make up the bulk of a Lions, sort of like in the Welsh team in 2013, won back-to-back Six Nations and then made up 12 out of 15 starters for the Lions in Australia, that puts that team arguably ahead of some other Northern Hemisphere teams. And then the 2003 England team went on to make up the bulk of the 2005 Lions team. They got absolutely smashed. So there's loads of things that go into it. I agree that the World Cup is sort of the ultimate thing. And if would I trade 2 or 3 Grand Slams for Wales to win the World Cup? Yes. Would I trade a Grand Slam for a World Cup semi-final? Absolutely not. I would rather have a World Cup I would rather have a Grand Slam. So it's kind of a bit like that. I would say that the World Cup for the 2003 team does put them ahead, because it's something that no Northern Hemisphere team has ever done. But if this Andy Farrell Ireland team goes on to win 2 or 3 or 4 Grand Slams, then you'd have to start saying that the success over a longer period it counts for something. And of course, because of rugby's progressed so much, if today's Ireland team was to play the 2003 England team, it would be like 50-0 to this Ireland team, because rugby's come on that much.
50-0. Vuyo, you've seen it back in 2003 Australia. Johnny Wilkinson, drop goal, extra time. 4 more years. George Gregan. Now we're looking at this Irish team. They're performing like no other European team has performed before. This is an amazing achievement currently. They're winning games left, right, and center. They traveled to New Zealand and they beat New Zealand in a series. They're coming to South Africa. Similar team. They've only lost, one player in Johnny Sexton. Traveling to SA, hoping that they can beat South Africa. And if they do beat South Africa, what can we make of this team? Can we still compare them to the 2003 Clive Woodward? Actually, even 2002, because in 2002, they traveled to New Zealand, the English team, and won in New Zealand. They traveled to Australia and won in Australia in 2002. They went back the following year and won away from home, the 2003 team. What do we make of it? What are your thoughts, Vickers?
First of all, Wales is better than Ireland because Wales have a 7th World Cup and Ireland has no World Cup. That's the first things first. Anyway, no, you know what? I think Hugh put it into perspective. You can put it perfectly. If they go on to win, obviously Grand Slam for the next 4 years, 100%. I think they should be given that tag. But as Jade said, before they do that, before they get there, if they don't have that World Cup, it's always going to be the England will always have the upper hand because they got something that they've basically, that 4-year plan that worked on that drop goal that put everything into perspective. So you can never. I'm gonna make an example about Southern Hemisphere. New Zealand won the World Cup 1987. New Zealand was number one for years, 2011, with nothing. And we all respected New Zealand, but everyone always came back to the same thing. But why don't they win the World Cup? Why don't they win the World Cup? That was always it. And if you guys remember, New Zealand has lost some very, very quality players. I mean, if we look at the 95 squad, you look at the 99 squad, the players, the 2-7 squad for New Zealand was top, but those players don't have a World Cup, and that is why those players, whenever we talk about the best players in the world, you always argue the fact that did they win the World Cup, and everyone says no, but they were number one in the world for many years. So for my thinking is that if Andy Farrell and Ireland need the 2027 World Cup. Because if they get that World Cup, they could literally be the top of that food chain, barring South Africa with 4 World Cups. That's my opinion on it.
Interesting. Very interesting. So basically the debate continues then, I guess, until Ireland travel to Pretoria, Highveld, and maybe pull a bit of upsets in South Africa. Who knows? Jade.
Yeah, until they win the World Cup, they'll be like our project cricket team. So yeah, we'll put them in that bracket. So they won't be. We can't put them in that aspect. So yeah, like Buyo has said, the pinnacle is the World Cup. So yeah, I'll put them in the same bracket as the Proteas, our cricket team in South Africa, which hasn't won a World Cup as well.
Fair enough. We'll put it out on our podcast on Spotify and Apple podcasts. So we'll basically hear some of the thoughts from our fans, some of the people that listen into this conversation, what your guys' thoughts are, and we will share these on our Twitter handles as well, and also start up the debate again. Obviously, there is that difference of how we look at it versus the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere, how we look at these competitions and how we look at performance on overall perspective of these countries. Gentlemen, thank you very much for...
Scoop.
Yes, sir.
Before you go, actually a perfect example that Jay just reminded me of is now Lionel Messi. If you remember, everyone asked, is he the greatest player? And everyone used to come back to the same thing. He has never won a World Cup. And that is the only way he has tipped... what's his name? Ronaldo. That's the only way he has tipped Cristiano Ronaldo, because now Messi has a World Cup and Ronaldo doesn't. Cheers, fellas.
All right, I guess that's it. That makes the debate, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me, Buyo. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Jade. And thank you to the listeners. And obviously, thank you, Scrum Half. Thank you, Lita. Gentlemen, it's been great. Looking forward.
A quick one. To everybody out there, guys, there's a big documentary coming out in Australia. It will be released on Thursday. It's Rugby Australia has edited the documentary that they done last year with Eddie Jones. It's a 3-part documentary. I think we don't want to miss this one. It launched on Thursday.
You were not here for croissants, mate. All right, gentlemen, have a great Sunday. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.